Have you ever felt like the world is just too much? Like your mind is racing but your feet aren't moving? You sit quietly, yet inside there's noise, constant, uncontrollable, relentless. It's not just the deadlines, the bills, the arguments, or the notifications. It's that nagging voice in your head saying, "You're behind. You're not doing enough. You should be better by now." We all crave peace. But in a world like this, fast, demanding, noisy, can you really stay calm without giving it all up and becoming a monk in the mountains? That question haunted me for years. And then I discovered something that changed everything. You don't need a cave. You don't need to escape your life. You don't need to delete all your apps, quit your job, or shave your head. Because peace isn't a place. It's not even a goal. Peace is a skill. And just like any skill, it can be trained, gently, patiently, and daily. But here's the trap that most people fall into. They think peace means having no problems, no mess, no noise, no thoughts, no mistakes. That's the lie. True peace is not the absence of chaos, it's the presence of clarity within it. Imagine this: you're standing in the middle of a storm, the wind is howling, leaves whip past your face, but inside you there's a still lake, untouched, unshaken. That's the kind of peace we're here to build, not the kind that comes from escaping, the kind that comes from mastering the mind within the storm. Now, you might be wondering, how do I even begin to train my mind to do that? You don't need 10 years in a monastery. You just need to know where to look, and most importantly, where not to look. Because the truth is, most people are searching for peace in all the wrong places. They look to external things: a bigger house, a quieter environment, a partner who never triggers them, a job that doesn't stress them out. But all of those things are unstable, changeable, temporary. And the moment they shift, which they will, our so-called peace shatters. So here's the first truth. Peace isn't something you find out there. It's something you uncover in here, inside you. Now, that may sound cliché, but stay with me. Because I'm not here to give you fluffy inspiration or another spiritual quote to hang on your fridge. I'm here to show you, through ancient Buddhist wisdom, real-life stories from the monastery, and powerful mind-training practices, exactly how to unlock that inner stillness. Even if your mind is a mess right now, even if your past feels like a burden, even if you've tried meditation before and thought, "This just doesn't work for me." Because the truth is, it does work. You just haven't been shown the right way to approach it. What we'll uncover together isn't about becoming some enlightened, emotionless being floating above the world. It's about becoming deeply human again, grounded, clear, awake. It's about learning how to breathe again, not just with your lungs, but with your entire being. So take a deep breath right now. Feel it come in and go out. Notice that moment, that pause, right between the inhale and the exhale. That's where peace lives, not in some faraway future, not after your problems disappear, but in this very breath, if you can learn how to meet it. Over the next few chapters, I'll guide you through exactly how to train your mind to stay peaceful, even when life gets messy. Not through force, not through discipline, but through awareness, understanding, and practice. And it all starts with seeing peace not as a result, but as a relationship between you and the thoughts that try to pull you away from yourself. You don't have to fight them. You just have to stop believing they are you. So if you're ready not to escape your life, but to meet it differently, then let's walk this path together. Because in the mess, there is a method. In the noise, there is music. And in the chaos, there is a calm that's been waiting for you all along. Let's begin. We often think peace means having nothing on our minds. No thoughts, no noise, no emotions. We imagine that the only way to find calm is to shut everything off, to silence the mental chatter completely, to enter some blank state of mind where nothing bothers us. But let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to stop thinking? The more you try, the louder your mind gets. The more you resist, the more it pushes back. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It keeps popping back up, harder, faster, more forcefully. And here's where most people give up. They think, I just can't meditate, my mind is too busy, I must be doing something wrong. But what if I told you, you're not doing it wrong? What if I told you that even the most advanced meditators, even lifelong monks, still have thoughts during meditation? Because peace isn't about getting rid of your thoughts, it's about changing your relationship to them. You see, the real problem is that your mind is full. The real problem is that you believe everything it says. You treat every thought as the truth, every worry as a prediction, every judgment as a fact, every emotion as a call to action. You feel anger and you react. You feel fear and you shrink. You feel sadness and you spiral. But what if you did? What if you could feel the wave without drowning in it? What if you could watch your thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky instead of becoming the storm itself? In Buddhist teachings, the mind is often compared to the sky. Vast, spacious, boundless thoughts. They're just clouds. Sometimes thick and dark, sometimes scattered and harmless, sometimes not there at all. But here's the truth most people forget. The sky is never broken by the clouds. No matter how stormy it gets, the sky remains untouched. And you at your core are that sky. Peace doesn't come when the clouds disappear. It comes when you realize you are not the clouds. You are not your anxiety. You are not your anger. You are not your guilt, your shame, your fear, your past. You are the awareness beneath all of it. The spaciousness that can hold every emotion, every thought, every experience, without losing itself. Let me offer you a small shift that can change everything. Next time you feel an overwhelming thought, don't react, don't resist, just notice. Say to yourself, there's anger, there's fear, there's that old insecurity again. Watch it, label it, let it pass. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to argue with it. You just need to see it clearly and give it space. That's the power of non-reactivity. It doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. It means you no longer serve them tea and let them move in. They come. They go, but you stay, centered, unmoved, aware. You know, I once heard a monk describe peace in the simplest way I've ever heard. Peace is the ability to sit with a thought and not become it. And when I first heard that, something clicked. I didn't need to fight my thoughts. I just had to stop fusing with them. That small shift, it changed the way I saw everything. Because once you stop believing that your thoughts are you, you begin to create space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you reclaim your power, you stop reacting, you start choosing. And that is where true peace begins. Peace isn't a perfectly still pond. It's learning to be still even as ripples appear. So the next time your mind feels messy, don't try to sweep it clean. Just sit, breathe, watch, and remember, the sky was never broken, and neither are you. If peace isn't the absence of thought, if calm doesn't mean a blank mind, then why does it still feel so chaotic up there? Why do our thoughts come in like crashing waves? Why does our mind, even in silence, sound like a crowded room? Let's take a closer look, because what's making your mind messy isn't just the noise, it's the way you relate to the noise. You see, we live in a world where stimulation is endless. Every day, from the moment you wake up, your attention is pulled in a dozen directions. Your phone lights up before the sun even rises. The news, the comments, the expectations. It all comes rushing in. And your mind, it never gets a break. But here's the thing most people overlook. The chaos outside is not the cause, it's just the trigger. The real turbulence is happening inside you. And it often begins with a single, quiet, unconscious belief. I am what I think. It sounds harmless, logical even, but it's one of the most dangerous illusions we live with. Because if every thought equals truth, and every emotion equals identity, then every storm that passes through your mind becomes your home. You start believing that your anger means you're an angry person, that your doubt means you're broken, that your anxiety means you're weak. But that's not the truth. That's the trap, and you're not alone in it. We've been conditioned since childhood to believe that our thoughts define us, that if we feel fear, we should run. If we feel jealousy, we should hide it. If we feel sadness, we should distract ourselves. So instead of meeting our minds with compassion, we meet them with judgment, with shame, with resistance, and what we resist persists. What we push away grows stronger. That's how the mess begins. It's not just the thoughts themselves, it's the looping, the over-identifying, the self-attacking. You start overthinking. Then you overthink the overthinking. Then you worry about the fact that you're worrying again. And before you know it, your mind becomes a maze with no exit. But here's the good news. There is a way out. And it doesn't start with controlling your mind. It starts with understanding it. Let's think of your mind like a garden. Every thought you entertain is a seed. If you water the seeds of fear, they grow into weeds that choke your peace. If you water the seeds of judgment, they grow into vines that tangle your joy. But if you learn to water the seeds of presence, of compassion, of non-judgment, your garden changes. And the key is awareness. Awareness is the sunlight that lets you see what you're growing before it takes over. Now you might be wondering, why do I keep planting the same seeds of fear, anger, and doubt? Here, why. Because your mind loves patterns. It's not personal, it's neurological. Your brain is designed to repeat whatever it's practiced most, even if what it's practicing is pain. That's why worry feels automatic, why stress feels familiar, why self-doubt feels like home. But just because your mind is wired that way doesn't mean it can't change. The Buddha once said, "What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create." That's not just poetic, it's neuroscience. When you observe your mind instead of obeying it, you begin to break the cycle. You begin to rewire the loop. You begin to return to yourself. So if your mind feels messy right now, you're not broken, you're just overwhelmed. You've been practicing chaos not because you wanted to, but because you were never shown another way, until now. Because the moment you learn to sit with your thoughts, to witness them without judgment, to breathe through them without reacting, that's the moment the mess starts to clear, not all at once, not forever, but slowly, gently, like mist lifting from a still lake. So be patient with yourself. This is not about fixing your mind, it's about freeing it. Let it be messy for a while. Let it unravel. Let the knots loosen in their own time. Because peace isn't built by force, it's built by familiarity, by learning the nature of your own mind, and finally, becoming its friend. Let me take you to a place far away from the noise, a place where the days begin before sunrise, where robes are worn instead of suits, and where the loudest sound is often the beating of your own heart. This is the monastery where I trained. Now people often assume that living in a monastery is peaceful by default. No phones, no traffic, no emails, no drama, just simplicity, stillness, silence. But here's the truth no one tells you. The monastery doesn't eliminate chaos, it reveals it. Because when the outer noise fades, the inner noise gets louder. I remember my first week there. I had imagined that I'd immediately feel serene, enlightened above it all. But what I encountered instead was myself. Every insecurity, every old wound, every judgment I had buried under years of busyness and distraction, and it all came rushing in. I felt angry for no reason. I felt anxious just sitting still. I felt like a fraud, and most painfully of all, I felt worthless. Yes, even in a place dedicated to awakening, I sat with that aching thought. I'm not enough. I don't belong here. And then something happened that changed everything. One day, while doing my chores, sweeping leaves under the Bodhi trees, I must have looked particularly lost in thought because an older monk approached me. He said nothing at first, just stood next to me and swept in silence. Then, in the softest voice, he asked, "What story are you believing right now?" I looked up confused. "What do you mean?" He smiled gently and said, "The look on your face, it's not the present moment. It's a story, something the mind created and you're believing it." I was stunned. I didn't realize it until that moment, but he was right. I wasn't sweeping leaves, I was sweeping thoughts. Thoughts like, "I'm not progressing fast enough. I'll never be peaceful. I'm failing at this." That monk sat down on a stone bench and told me something I've never forgotten. When a person truly understands the mind, they stop believing every thought it produces. They learn to smile at the storm, not because the storm is gone, but because they are no longer afraid of the rain. He told me that training the mind is not about conquering it like a battlefield. It's about befriending it like a scared child. And in that friendship, you become gentle. You stop trying to force yourself into peace. You stop attacking yourself for being human, and you begin to simply observe, lovingly, patiently, until the chaos begins to settle. That day, he gave me a small practice. He said, "Each time a painful thought arises, don't judge it. Don't believe it, just whisper to yourself, 'This too is just a cloud.' And then return to your breath." It sounded so simple, almost silly, but I tried it, and I kept trying it, day after day. And slowly, my relationship with my own mind began to shift. Not because the thoughts went away, but because I stopped following them like a lost traveler chasing a mirage. You see, the monastery didn't teach me how to escape pain. It taught me how to sit with it without becoming it. And that's what most people misunderstand about inner peace. They think it's a final destination. They think it's a finish line. But peace is a daily practice, a moment-to-moment choice. To return, to breathe, to see clearly, and to remain soft in a world that often hardens us. Even now, years later, when I feel lost in the mind's messiness, I return to that lesson under the Bodhi tree. What story am I believing right now? Is it true? Or is it just a cloud passing through? And when I remember that, the sky opens again, just like it did back then, when a wise old monk reminded a struggling novice that no thought has the power to define who we are, unless we let it. You don't have to live in a monastery to learn this, but you do have to stop running from your mind long enough to listen to it, to meet it with compassion, to sweep the garden slowly, not to make it perfect, but simply to remember that peace isn't built overnight. It's built every time we choose awareness over autopilot, curiosity over judgment, breath over reaction, and that is where we begin again. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment of stillness to remember everything we've forgotten. In the last chapter, under the shade of the Bodhi tree, we saw how even in a sacred place, the storm of the mind still finds its way in. We saw how peace isn't something we stumble upon. It's something we learn to practice, like sweeping leaves with attention or listening to our thoughts with kindness. And now, the question naturally arises, how do we bring that practice into our daily lives? Because let's face it, most of us don't live in monasteries. We have alarms ringing before sunrise, kids to care for, emails that pile up faster than laundry, and 1,000 little things that pull us away from ourselves. But here's the quiet truth that has guided Zen practitioners for centuries. You don't need to escape your life to find peace. You need to return to it with awareness. And the way we return is through small, sacred practices. Simple rituals, done consistently. That gently remind the mind you don't have to fight, you can rest here. Let me walk with you through a few of these practices. Not as rules, but as invitations. No matter where you are in life, no matter how messy things feel, your breath is always here, patiently waiting for your return. And that's where we begin. Find a moment in your day. Early morning is ideal, but even one quiet pause in the afternoon will do. Sit comfortably, close your eyes if you'd like, and feel your breath, not forcefully, not perfectly, just notice. Inhale, exhale, that's it. What you're doing is not just calming the nervous system. You're training your mind to stay. Instead of running after every thought that shouts for your attention. Even just 3 minutes a day. Do it not as a task, but as an act of coming home to yourself. When was the last time you moved through your day like you had nowhere to rush to? Our bodies have become frantic. Even when we're not in a hurry, we act like we are. And your mind, it follows. Try this today. Choose one ordinary task. Maybe washing dishes, maybe walking to your car, maybe folding laundry. And do it 20% slower than usual. Feel the weight of your hands. Listen to the texture of life around you. This is not laziness. This is deliberate presence. Zen monks often say, when you walk, just walk. When you eat, just eat. This is that practice brought into your daily rhythm, not to add effort, but to remove distraction. You will have thoughts, some pleasant, some painful. That's not the problem. The problem begins when you start judging them, clinging to them, believing they are you. So practice this. When a thought arises, whether it's anxious, angry, or restless, pause for a second and say quietly in your mind, this is just a cloud. I am the sky. No need to analyze it. No need to fight it. Just let it pass. Because the sky does not chase the clouds. It holds them and lets them go. When you become the observer, not the reactor, you unlock the first gate to true inner freedom. You don't need 30 minutes on a cushion. You need 30 seconds of real presence again and again. Let's make it practical. When your phone buzzes, don't check it right away. First, take one conscious breath. When you drink water, actually taste it. When you're in traffic, place one hand gently on your chest and feel your heartbeat. These are mindful anchors. They pull you back, gently, lovingly, into now. Because the truth is, peace doesn't come all at once. It accumulates in tiny choices, in soft moments, in those seconds when you choose awareness over autopilot. And finally, perhaps most importantly, practice compassion. Not just toward others, but toward you. At the end of each day, sit for a moment, breathe, and repeat to yourself slowly, may I be well, may I be peaceful, may I be safe, may I live with ease. Let those words settle. Then bring someone else to mind, a friend, a stranger, even someone difficult. Say the same words for them. You're not just sending good wishes. You're rewiring your heart to open instead of close, to soften instead of judge. And the more you do this, the more you realize peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of unshakable love. None of these practices will change your life overnight. And that's the point. You're not trying to rush peace. You're learning to trust it, to meet yourself as you are without trying to fix, to return to the breath, to the body, to this moment again and again, until peace is no longer something you practice. It's something you embody. You've slowed your breath, you've walked slower, you've remembered how to return to the present moment. And yet, there's something that still pulls you away, something invisible, insistent, exhausting. It's not noise, not chaos, it's your own thoughts. More precisely, the thoughts that loop endlessly. What if I'm doing it wrong? What if I miss something? What if it all goes badly? This is the trap of overthinking. It's sneaky, isn't it? Because on the surface, it feels like you're being productive, responsible, prepared. You're replaying the past, reviewing every detail, or projecting into the future, anticipating every possibility. But here's the painful irony. Overthinking doesn't solve problems. It creates them. Your mind becomes a hamster wheel, spinning and spinning and spinning, but going nowhere. Let me share something that helped me deeply. One evening in the monastery, I sat meditating under a candlelight, and my mind was louder than ever. I had replayed a conversation I had earlier in the day, maybe 100 times. Did I say the wrong thing? Did I seem arrogant? Should I apologize? Did they misunderstand? The thoughts just kept looping. Until finally, I opened my eyes and stared at the flame. And I noticed something simple. The flame flickered, but it never left its place. It danced, swayed, even bent under the breeze, but it stayed. That moment taught me a truth I'd forgotten. Your mind will flicker, but you can stay. So how do we escape the trap of overthinking? Not by fighting the mind, not by yelling at it to stop, but by softening our grip on it. Let me offer you a few quiet, powerful shifts. Just because a thought arises doesn't make it true. You can think 100 times. They don't like me. I'm not enough. Something will go wrong. And none of those thoughts change reality. The mind loves to guess because it's afraid of uncertainty. But freedom begins when you admit, I don't know, and that's okay. Instead of filling in every blank with a worst-case scenario, you begin to rest in the honesty of not knowing. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Overthinking is fueled by the phrase, what if? What if I fail? What if I never succeed? What if they leave? But rarely do we stop to ask, what is actually happening right now? Not in my imagination, not in some possible future, but here, this breath, this room, this moment. You'll find that 90% of what your mind fears doesn't even exist. It's not a present danger, it's a projected illusion. And when you bring your attention to what is, the power of what if fades like a dream in the morning. When the mind spins, the body grounds. Take 3 deep breaths, feel your feet, rub your hands together slowly, place one hand over your heart. These simple acts interrupt the loop, because overthinking pulls you up into your head, but the body brings you back down into your life. It whispers, come back, you are here, and here is enough. Many people overthink because they believe the perfect choice exists, but the truth, you don't need a perfect decision. You need a clear intention. Choose, take the next step, then stop checking the door you just locked. There's a deep kind of peace in moving forward, even when the outcome is uncertain, because growth doesn't come from certainty, it comes from courage. When a strong thought arises, whether fear, doubt, or planning, don't argue with it. Instead, gently note it. Planning. Fear. Analyzing. It's like labeling files. You acknowledge the thought, but you don't let it take over. That simple act of noting creates space. Space to observe, space to breathe, space to choose. And in that space, the loop begins to dissolve. Overthinking doesn't mean you're broken. It just means your mind is trying to protect you too much. But life is not meant to be solved. It's meant to be lived. Not everything needs to be figured out. Some things need to be felt. Some things need to be accepted. And some things just need to pass. So next time you feel your mind spiraling, try this. Pause, breathe, return. Whisper gently, right now I choose peace, not perfection. And then do something small, something real. Drink a glass of water, step outside, send a kind message. Remind yourself you are not your thoughts, you are not your fears. You are the one who watches the storm pass. And you've made it this far, not by overthinking, but by continuing, by breathing, by beginning again. There's a silence that overthinking leaves behind, a quiet space where doubt becomes something deeper, darker, heavier. It's not about a single bad day. It's not about a difficult choice. It's about you and the ache of believing Maybe I'm just not enough. Have you ever felt that? Not just failure in what you do, but failure in who you are. That haunting voice that whispers, "You're behind. You're broken. You don't matter." This is not just sadness. This is a kind of spiritual forgetting, the loss of connection to your own worth. But even this dark valley can become sacred ground. Let me tell you a story. Before I became a monk, I lived in a training monastery, a place where we prepared for full ordination. The days were disciplined. The teachings were profound. The silence was nourishing. And yet, I felt lost. Not because I didn't understand the teachings, but because something inside me kept whispering, "You're not ready. You're not sincere enough. Others are more worthy." Even though I meditated every day, even though I followed every precept, even though the other monks were kind, I felt like a fraud. Every smile I offered felt hollow. Every chant I recited echoed with emptiness. Until one morning, when the feelings became too much, I skipped breakfast, sat alone by the Bodhi tree, and let the tears fall. That's when an elder monk who had been silently observing me for weeks quietly walked over. He didn't say much, just looked at me gently and asked, "What is heavier, your actions or your thoughts about them?" I didn't understand. He repeated, "Are you judging yourself by your effort or by the expectations in your mind?" I said quietly, "I feel like I'm failing." He smiled kindly. "Then look at your life, not your labels. You meditate, you serve, you care. Isn't that enough?" And then he said something I'll never forget. "Your worth is not earned, it is remembered." The fact that you can feel pain means your heart is still open, and anything with an open heart is sacred. That one conversation didn't magically fix me, but it planted a seed. And that seed grew roots in the deepest place of my being. It whispered to me again and again, "You are not worthless. You are simply wounded, and wounds can be healed." Many of us carry emotional wounds from childhood, failure, rejection, or betrayal. And we internalize these experiences as evidence. "See, I'm not lovable. I'll never be enough. I don't deserve joy." But what Buddhism teaches us, what the Buddha saw under that tree, is that none of these are the truth of who you are. They're conditioned responses, mental formations. They arise, they pass. They are not you. You are the awareness that sees them. You are the silence that holds them. You are the compassion that can heal them. So how do we begin to remember our worth? Not through achieving more, not through impressing anyone, but through gentle self-inquiry and loving attention. Let me offer you some ways to start walking this path. 1. Return to reality, not the story. The mind tells stories. "I'm a failure. I always mess up. No one really cares." But reality often says something very different. Take a moment today to list 5 real things you've done that helped someone, even in small ways. You'll begin to see that the mind's narrative is not the whole picture. 2. Speak kindly to yourself. If a child came to you and said, "I feel like I'm worthless," would you criticize them? Of course not. You'd hold them. Remind them of their goodness. Let them cry and stay with them. So why do we treat our own hearts with cruelty? Start to change the script, not with false praise, but with truth. "I'm doing my best. I'm not perfect, but I am trying. I deserve gentleness." These words are not fluff. They are medicine. 3. Accept mistakes without labeling the self. You are not your worst day. You are not your biggest regret. Mistakes are not definitions. They are information. They are the universe's way of refining your path, not rejecting your worth. In Zen, we bow even after we fall, because every fall is part of the journey back to center. 4. Offer kindness to others. This may seem counterintuitive, but when you feel worthless, try helping someone, not to prove your value, but to remember it. A kind word, a silent prayer, a shared moment of presence. As you light a candle for someone else, you'll notice your own darkness receding. If you are hearing this right now, and part of you still believes you don't matter, let me say this clearly. Your existence is not a mistake. Your pain is not proof of failure. Your breath is evidence that you still belong. You don't have to do more, be more, fix more. You just have to return to the truth that even in your messiness, even in your doubts, you are whole. Not someday, not if everything goes right, but now, as you are right here. Right now, we've talked about feeling unworthy, the heaviness of thinking, maybe I'm not enough. But often that feeling turns into something darker. It becomes a voice, cold, harsh, unrelenting. I'm stupid. I'm weak. I'll never change. And it doesn't stop there. We begin to resent ourselves for being anxious, for being tired, for not being perfect. This is self-hatred, the most silent poison we carry. And what's most tragic, we don't even realize we're doing it. We'd never speak to a friend this way. We'd never shame a child for being confused or afraid. Yet when it comes to ourselves, we scold, we punish. We tighten our hearts as if that's how we'll improve. But here's the truth Zen teaches us. What you fight inside yourself only grows stronger. The more you reject your pain, the louder it screams. The more you deny your flaws, the deeper they burrow. Healing begins not with resistance, but with compassion. Let's clear up a myth first. Self-compassion doesn't mean making excuses. It doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean becoming self-absorbed. It means this: I will stop being my own enemy. I will sit with my pain as I would sit with a dear friend who is hurting. Because beneath the anger, the shame, the anxiety, there is someone who simply wants to be safe, to be seen, to be loved. That someone is you. It usually starts in childhood. We're taught directly or silently that we must earn love, earn worth, be good enough to deserve kindness. So we internalize it. If I'm not perfect, I don't deserve peace. If I make a mistake, I'm a bad person. And slowly we develop a reflex, a pattern of turning inward with a clenched fist. Every time we fail, we hit. Every time we feel, we judge. Every time we fall, we abandon ourselves. But the Buddha didn't awaken through punishment. He awakened through insight and through deep compassion for all beings, including himself. So how do we begin? Not by fixing ourselves, but by choosing, moment by moment, to respond with kindness. Here are 3 gentle but powerful practices. 1. Mindful noticing. The next time you catch yourself saying something cruel to yourself, pause. Notice the voice. Where is it coming from? Whose voice is it really? A parent, a teacher, an old version of you. You don't have to argue with it, just name it. This is the inner critic. This is fear speaking. This is pain, not truth. When you name it, you create space. And in that space, kindness can enter. 2. Tender touch. This may sound simple, but it's profound. Place your hand gently over your heart, or hold your own face for a moment. Or just place your palms together and bow slightly. These gestures, used in Buddhist tradition, remind your body, I am safe, I am loved, I am here. You don't need grand affirmations, just simple kindness repeated with care. 3. Rewriting the inner dialogue. Instead of I'm so stupid, try that was hard, but I'm learning. Instead of I always mess things up, say I made a mistake, that's okay, I can begin again. These phrases might feel awkward at first, especially if you've spent years being your own worst critic. But like watering a plant, self-compassion needs repetition, and over time, you'll start to see your own heart softening toward itself. In Japanese Zen, there is a concept called wabi-sabi. It means embracing imperfection, not as a flaw, but as a source of unique beauty. A cracked bowl, a crooked tree, a face lined with age. These are not broken things. They are sacred because of their imperfection. Can you look at yourself that way? not as a project, but as a living, breathing expression of life's mysterious unfolding. You are allowed to be cracked, to be undone, to be in process, and still so worthy of love. Self-hatred is a habit, but so is compassion. And every time you choose kindness over cruelty, you rewire your soul. You shift from punishment to peace, from shame to sanctuary. You come home to yourself. Not when everything is perfect, but when you finally whisper, "Even now, I am still worthy." And you believe it, even if just for a moment. By now, you've learned to be gentle with yourself, to stop the self-hate, to speak kindness, to see beauty in imperfection, but even compassion, without consistency, can fade like incense in the wind. What you do once can inspire you. What you do daily transforms you. In Zen, we don't seek progress in leaps. We seek it in drops. Tiny, consistent drops of effort that slowly, silently shape the mind. The secret, the monks say, is not in the intensity, but in the return. Mental mastery doesn't come from a single breakthrough. It's built in the boring, in the quiet, in the unseen moments. It's in sitting for 10 minutes even when you don't feel like meditating, choosing a mindful breath instead of an angry word, returning to your center when life pulls you off balance. These aren't glamorous, they're not flashy, but they are sacred, because what you practice, you become. Practice judgment, and you become judgmental. Practice patience, and you become peaceful. Practice stillness, and stillness becomes your home. We live in a world addicted to the instant. One-click answers, one scroll dopamine, one tap escape. So when we try to meditate or journal or sit in silence, and nothing happens right away, we quit. But Zen has never been about speed. It's about depth. Imagine planting a bamboo seed. For the first 5 years, it barely breaks the ground, but underground, it's growing an entire root system. Then in the 6th year, it shoots up 80 feet. Consistency works like that. You won't always see results, but something within you is growing, anchoring, strengthening. Here's the truth: you will want to quit, you will forget your practice, you will lose motivation, and that's okay. But each time you come back, you're not starting from zero. You're building a relationship with your mind, and the mind responds to devotion. Even if it's just 5 mindful breaths a day, even if it's 1 moment of awareness before reacting, that's how the mountain moves. Not in one push, but in 1,000 gentle nudges. There was a novice monk in our monastery. He wasn't the best at chanting. He struggled to sit still during meditation. He often forgot the precepts. Others advanced faster. Some received praise, but he simply showed up every day, rain or shine, focused or distracted. He bowed, he breathed, he tried again. Years passed, and one day during a silent meditation retreat, the abbot stood before the assembly and said, "Some of you burn like fireworks, bright, loud, and brief, but one among you burns like a candle, steady, quiet, constant. That light may seem small, but it never goes out." We all knew who he meant. That monk didn't change overnight, but because he never gave up, he changed everything. Want to build your mental mastery? Here are some Zen-inspired tools to keep you steady. 1. Create a ritual, not a task. Don't say, "I have to meditate." Say, "I get to sit with myself." Light a candle, take 3 breaths, bow to your cushion. Create sacred space, even for 5 minutes. Make it a ritual, and the mind will respect it. 2. Track the return, not the perfection. You don't need 30 perfect days. You need 1 messy day, followed by the choice to return. Track your returns. That's where your power lives. 3. Connect to a larger why. You're not meditating for Instagram. You're not practicing mindfulness to impress anyone. You're doing it because your peace matters. Your presence matters. Your awakening matters. When your reason is rooted in the heart, The practice becomes unshakable every step you take, no matter how small, plants a seed in your soul, and every time you water that seed with consistency, you grow a new world within. Mastery is not about being the best. It's about not giving up when you're at your worst. It's about returning to the breath, returning to your center, returning to the truth that you are not here to be perfect. You're here to practice. And practice, done with love, becomes a way of life. So here we are, you've listened, you've breathed, you've paused, and in doing so, you've already begun to change, not because you became someone new, but because you remembered who you already are. You are not your thoughts, you are not your chaos. You are not the noise of the world. You are the sky, vast, unchanging, silent. Thoughts may pass through you like clouds, some dark, some light, some stormy, but you remain still, open, infinite. There will be days when the clouds return, when self-doubt visits, when the storm of overthinking rolls in again. But now you know, you can simply watch. You can step back, breathe, smile, because you no longer mistake the weather for the sky. You've learned that peace isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's found in the consistent practice of awareness. You've seen that overthinking doesn't need solving. It needs space and compassion. You felt that even in your lowest. There is a light in you that cannot be extinguished. You've discovered the power of breath, of being here, of being enough, and most importantly, you've started the path home to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's all awakening is. Not an escape, not a goal, but a soft turning inward, where the chaos falls quiet, and the sky reveals itself. And you, if this journey touched something in you, a thought, a feeling, a truth long forgotten, consider this. Let's walk a little farther together. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism Wisdom, where each video is a lantern, lit with ancient teachings and present moment stillness. And if you feel someone you care about might need a moment of peace, share this with them. Sometimes one breath is all it takes to begin again. Until next time, may your days be light, your heart be open, and your sky forever clear.